Good evening, everyone, wherever you might be watching around the country or indeed the world. We're 5 rounds down in the Apex Rear Wing DRM Championship, and that means we have 5 rounds remaining. It's a relatively short trip in distance from last week's venue in Watkins Glen to tonight's venue in Montreal, but a fairly sizable trip back in time, as tonight we'll be racing on the historic version of the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, dating all the way back to 1988. Originally known as the Ile Notre Dame Circuit from the time it was opened in 1978, the circuit was named after the legendary Canadian Formula One driver Gilles Villeneuve when he tragically lost his life during qualifying for the 1982 Belgian Grand Prix at Zolder. The circuit is built on a man-made island in the St. Lawrence River, and as such, the walls are never far away. This version of the track features some terrifyingly quick corners, which will no doubt mean that no error will go unpunished. And it'll be interesting to see who has the upper hand as the arm wrestle between the powerful Porsches and the economical BMW continues. Bringing you all the action tonight, once again, it will be Stairs and Matt Dunlop. Good evening, Matty.
Good evening, Stairs. Great to be with you. And hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in as always. Welcome to the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and in particular, the 1988 version of the circuit, as you touched on. As we see the cars go around in this practice session at the moment, you can just see how close these walls are to the sides of the track. And while a few of those walls are in the same spots that they are in the current modern day Formula One circuit, there's quite a few areas that are a little bit different. Isn't that right, Stairs?
Very much so. Most notably in the final sector of the racetrack, where there are some very, very, very fast chicanes. So fast that you may not even refer to them as chicanes.
That's exactly right, especially on that back straight where the pit lane used to be just before this version of the track was redone, I suppose. As you can see the old grid slots on the back straight just after the back hairpin, the L'Equipe hairpin as it is called, I believe. And it leads into an incredibly quick right, left, right chicane with very high aggressive curbs that leaves almost no margin for error should you get it wrong.
Yeah, those curbs could cause some of the drivers to roll. We've seen it happen a number of times already in this practice session. Let's have a quick look now at the points scenario as we head into this 6th round out of 10 for the DRM Championship. And of course, with 6 rounds in the books after tonight, there'll just be the 4 left. So, pardon the points, just having a couple of issues there getting them up. There they are, 97 points to Goofball Antics. He leads the championship in the BMW 320 with Sam Smith missing last round, the championship leader going into the 5th round last week and relinquishing that championship lead to Goofball Antics. Berto's had a couple of bad results but fought back brilliantly in Watkins Glen last week to move himself up into 3rd place in the championship, ahead of Madbird on 60 points. Xerus making a recovery after a disastrous start to the championship for him with DNF. He's in 5th place on 56 points, ahead of Brenton Foley on 50. Resist getting his first podium in Watkins Glen last week is in 7th place on 46 points, ahead of Roadhog and Pablo, and then Nether rounding out the top 10. Quite a few drivers fairly closely locked in the 30s there. So that'll be a battle, no doubt, towards the end of the championship as well.
That's exactly right. With a few of those early DNFs, it's really mixed up what I think is going to be the final result of the championship table, especially with the likes of Xerus and Resist, who had those early DNFs results, which means that they're well down in the points. But now that everyone's starting to get a good feel for how these DRM cars behave, I'd say we're going to be seeing a lot fewer of those, and those points gaps are going to be shortening a little bit, especially in the midfield. So it'll be interesting to see who catches up and who can leapfrog who in the title standings. But speaking of DNFs, I reckon we're going to see a handful of them at this track alone.
Well, yes, that's exactly right, Matty. And the last time that we had walls this close to the circuit was in Belle Isle, and that was a very, very entertaining race indeed. We saw a number of strategies play out there, and a lot of cars in the wall at various points throughout that race. And because we only run at about 75% damage, they can continue when normally they would have had accidents that put them out of the race completely, but it certainly does hamper their pace. And we saw the Porsches faring reasonably badly in the back end of that race, and the only reason that Sam Smith, I believe, ended up as high as he did, up in third place on the podium there, was because of some attrition. As we see some very, very big accidents going on in the final part of this practice session between Resist and I think that was Tyrrell, and Pablo actually involved as well there on the back straight.
Yeah, quite a few cars looking a little bit worse for wear at the moment on that back straight, as you were saying. And yeah, the close walls are definitely one thing, but the curbs are going to be quite another, and they're going to throw up a couple of challenges, not least because of how aggressive they are, as we said earlier. Cars do have a tendency to roll if you hit those curbs aggressively around here, but track cut violations are quite severe, aren't they, Stez?
They are, and that's something the drivers have been complaining about in practice and throughout the week, is the track cut being quite severe. There was one earlier on, we saw, I watched Decimage at the second chicane get a track cut just for getting his wheels on the inside of the car up on the grass. He still had two wheels actually within the confines of the track. They weren't over the white line, but the track pinged him for a track cut. The game, I should say, pinged him for a track cut. So that will be something to keep an eye out. The drivers will probably know going into this race how tricky it can be to avoid those track cut violations. But of course, once you get 4 of those, any subsequent track cuts will result in a drive-through penalty, so keep an eye out for that.
That's exactly right. So the driver's going to have to be very wary, because the drive-through penalty, as we've seen, can easily take you out of the race. And the chicanes are going to have to take these drivers a little bit of getting used to, because while most of this track is quite similar to how it currently holds up in the present format, from the start line most of the way down to the back hairpin, indeed, is pretty similar to the way the track currently lies. There's a couple of corners that have been slightly reprofiled here and there, but those 2 main chicanes after the hairpin on the run down back towards the start-finish straight are very different from how they normally are. Of course, the first one was not present anymore, so that one, as we said, is going to take a little bit of getting used to. And the chicane that now lies where the Wall of Champions section is on the modern-day track is a lot faster in 1988 in this version of the circuit than it was. Sorry, I've got my tenses all wrong. It was a lot faster in 1988 on this version of the circuit than it is in the present day. You can smash through there at about 160 k's an hour and not have a scratch on you as long as you can keep it off the fence. But if you dip 2 tyres in the grass off the edge of that chicane, you will get a track cut violation.
Absolutely, and we've just seen Sam Smith going through that part of the track that you are talking about, and especially that turns 14 and 15, the first part of that chicane sequence, which is now in real life just a flat-out section, is so fast. It's basically on absolute limit of grip as you go through there, and the second part, not as fast, but certainly much faster than it is today, as you said, Matty. But very, very close to the limit we're seeing these guys driving now. We wonder how much of a margin for error will they give that in the qualifying session. We've seen a lot of the qualifying sessions in this championship so far beset by cars not setting laps because of track cuts. Barbagallo was one. We certainly saw that sort of thing happening in Sebring, and we saw it happen last week in Watkins Glen. So it's very, very likely to be an issue again tonight.
That's exactly right. And this track is not one of the easiest to overtake around. There are obviously a couple of spots where it's you can definitely go for a dive. Turn 1, for instance, the quick left-rights with a lot of runoff on the back part of the circuit. The hairpin, of course, is where you can get a little bit of a gap on someone when you try and get up the inside. But qualifying is super important as well. You want to be able to start in those leading positions so you don't get caught up in any unfortunate happenstance which might occur behind you off the start line. And another thing these drivers will have to be wary of is how bumpy this circuit is. Newer versions of the track have been resurfaced and smoothed out quite a bit, but this one is a very raggedy ride.
Absolutely right. And the graphic on your screen showing that we are in the qualifying session now. So time has finished on the practice. Sam Smith, the fastest man, ahead of his teammate Birdo. And in the end, that gap out to 0.8 of a second. So Sam Smith proving very, very fast on his return after a week off. And we are turning our attention now to Rody, who, as the slowest man in practice, will be the first to set his lap in this qualifying shootout. Matty, as we say pretty much every week, if you're watching us for the first time, welcome. We certainly enjoy your company. The way this shootout works is every driver gets one lap, and they will set their laps in the order reversed that they finished that practice session.
That's exactly right. The drivers do get a chance to go out and warm their tyres, brakes, and everything in between up before they make their way to the start-finish line. And that is what Rhodey's doing right now on his out lap. He's just getting a feel for the track, getting a feel for his temperatures and whatnot, seeing how his car's going to behave. He was saying in the practice session earlier that he wasn't sure if he wanted to go all to the wall in this qualifying session or just put together a safe lap and hopefully leapfrog a few of the other guys who may unfortunately DNF or get track cut violations. Because as we know in qualifying, or of course if you haven't tuned in with us before, I'll keep you posted. If you get only one track cut violation during your flying lap, it is nullified, completely zeroed out, and you start from the back of the grid stairs.
That's exactly right. And we also are aware that these cars handle very, very differently in qualifying trim to what they do with a full load of fuel. So if I was Rhodey, I would very much be opting for that second strategy of just setting a lap time, getting a time on the board, not driving it at 10 tenths, driving it somewhere in about 8 or 9 tenths, and just registering a time, because I can absolutely guarantee you that tonight someone is going to cut the track and they'll be starting from the back of the grid. Don't let it be you.
Absolutely. It's almost a given at this point, given how many track cut violations we were seeing in the practice session. As Rhodey blasts through the final chicane now to go onto the start-finish straight to start his flying lap. Let's see what he's able to do.
Interesting start to the lap. You've got to be in the middle of the circuit. Coming down the straight, way too much speed. He's taken into turn one, but he's drifted that nicely, actually. Bit of a recovery. I thought the back end was going to swap around on him. So he's made a fool of me straight away in this qualifying session. I was mentioning how the ideal line for turn one is to approach it from the middle of the circuit, because the middle then becomes the right as you sort of aim the car through towards the outside on the right-hand side of turn one. But of course, now we've seen a lot of other corners coming very thick and fast at Rhodey since then. Lots of left-right corners, and as you mentioned, the curbing on the chicanes very, very high and very, very punishing.
Yeah, he's making an effort to not go into first gear very often at all. And that part he's just gone into there is very tricky to jump on the brakes into when you've got when you're hard on the brakes, trying to get back into first gear and make your way around that. That and turn one, or the major braking zone, turn two, I think it is, that left-hander.
Will catch you out,
and Brody's hit the wall on the entrance of the hairpin, and his road's headed. He's cut to the infield, and the time is still ticking, so he's going to go ahead and finish this lap, but it's not going to be a great time from him.
Yeah, he misjudged the left-hand side of his car there as he was coming into the braking zone for the hairpin and just brushed the wall. The thing was completely unstable. Now, this is the Yahoo part of the circuit. Your car is absolutely on the edge through there. We've seen a lot of cars, a lot of drivers in the practice session have a sharp intake of breath as they went through there, and I don't blame them one bit. Final corner there for Rhodey. He's going to come to the line and we'll register a 1:44.9, and it is a time, but it won't be anywhere near as fast as he was probably hoping for.
Next up, we've got Tyrrell, who's about to cross the line in his green Ford Capri for Jeff Vader Racing, sponsored by Mobil 1, to start his flying lap as he goes past the pit exit, which is another one of the street features of this track, which has changed since 1988. The way that the pit lane rejoins onto the track is almost dangerous, you could say, and it's going to cause a little bit of havoc for guys trying to break into that left-hander.
That'll be why they changed it, I suppose. The modern pit lane shaving a fair bit of time off the racetrack, actually. It's cutting out turn one completely and rejoining on the outside of turn two. But it's been pretty clean so far for Tyrrell. He's a 10th down on Rhodey, but of course we all saw what happened to Rhodey's lap coming into the hairpin. And it was almost like with Rhodey, he got the difficult parts out of the way. Yes, he still had the Yahoo section to come through, but he got through those difficult chicanes early on, and the hairpin is just a relatively straightforward braking zone, and he just maybe overthunk it a little bit.
I'd say he did. I'd say he was a little bit too cautious with his brake marker, jumped on the anchors and just turned it in too early and went across the grass. And it does happen, and Tyrrell is now 1.3 seconds up as a result of that, and will probably make up a lot more time in this final sector too.
That's right. He was already up by 1.3 seconds as he came into the second sector split, and that was before the point where Rhodey lost it on his lap. So here is the Yahoo section. breathe in, and it's pretty clean there from Tyrrell. I think he's applying the strategy that we thought that Rhodey probably should have applied. Whether or not that was... and as I say that, I've given him the curse. He's gone way off the track there at what is now known as the Wall of Champions. He will have got a track cut, and, well, we can chalk that one up to the commentator's curse. Sorry about that, Tyrrell.
Very unfortunate. As I was saying earlier, if you get 2 wheels off the track at the exit of the final chicane, you'll get a track cut violation. And especially if you're at the end of a qualifying flying lap, that's going to be super disappointing for you. Greg Tara now, in a first of the BMW 320s, crosses the control line to get his lap underway, jumps on the brakes into turn 1, or is that turn 2? I never really am sure. I haven't got a track list of corners in front of me, I'm afraid, so I can't cross that. But he's looking neat and tidy so far, isn't he?
He very much is. Unfortunately, the map I've got, that first part, it doesn't actually refer to as a corner, but then turn 2, what I would call turn 2, the right-hander that takes you back towards that first chicane, it refers to as turns 2 and 3. And so, of course, all the other corner numbers go on from there. So it's weird. One corner that I wouldn't have called a corner, and I have to interrupt myself because Greg Tara's lost the rear end coming out of turn 6, a very tricky part of the racetrack, flat in a Formula 1 car. But of course, we are not in a Formula 1 car, and what a devastatingly bad qualifying session for a lot of these early runners. No time set for Tyrrell. And Greg Tara is going to be very much under pressure to get up ahead of Rhodey's time. And, of course, Bang's outlap is now compromised.
It is compromised, but it's very early on in the lap, so I don't think Bang's going to be feeling the effects too much from that unless Greg Tara makes another error later on in this lap, heaven forbid, of course. He's 11 seconds down, and he's very cautious through the hairpin.
Now, Pablo actually set a lap in qualifying that was between Tyrrell and Rhodey, so I would estimate, because he has done it in the past, that he is electing not to qualify in this session. Now, Greg Tara, all sorts of attitude going through that very, very fast back section to these lap turns 14 and 15. The BMW 320 up on 2 wheels, and again through what is to be known as the Wall of Champions from about 1998, of course. We're using a different part of the racetrack, and Greg Tara shows us what could have been. He ends up in second, 4.8 seconds adrift of Rhodey, but an aggressive end to the lap.
Nailed those curbs towards the in the final section of that one, but he does have a time down. It is 4.8 seconds behind Rhodey, of course, but he's got a time, and that could be all the difference. He's already ahead of at least one guy in this field. Could be more. Bang is now running his flying lap. He's very wobbly into the first chicane. Gets a little bit of 2-wheel action off this, that entry curb. Let's see if he can keep all 4 wheels on the track all the way around here, because as we know, if you've got 2 wheels up in the air, you're losing time. You're not able to accelerate or brake effectively. He is currently 1.8 seconds up, though, so he's looking pretty speedy. Yeah,
he didn't register a time last week in qualifying, but the 2 qualifying sessions that he did prior to that finished 13th and 11th. And if he sets a lap time here with a clean lap, he's going to be ahead of Rhodey and Greg Tara, so it could well be his best qualifying session to date if that happens.
That chicane that goes under the bridge that Bang just passed through is one to look out for, because something that's very unusual about this version of the circuit as he goes 4 seconds up in the second sector.
Wow.
That bridge chicane, yeah, great margin from Bang so far. That bridge chicane is very wide in terms of the width of the track on the run in, but as you go under the bridge, it all of a sudden, like almost immediately, shaves a meter off the side of the track. So you have to be careful not to use the entire width of the track as you're braking for that, because you could clabber the wall on the run into that corner.
That's very twitchy. Bang's car is going from left to right very, very abruptly. I have to wonder if his steering lock is set very, very sensitively. Has he made it out of the final corner? We lost him in the shot for a couple of seconds, but he's ahead of Rhodey by 10 seconds to take provisional pole. And a great lap from Bang, holding it together.
Very big margin there from Bang. And now we see Rhodey going through the final chicane, getting ready to start his lap. That's very wobbly. He's going to be losing a little bit of time through that. Let's see if he can make it up. It's a short run down to turn 1. I'm going to call this right-hander turn 1 because it is very well a turn in its own right. You have to navigate it very carefully to be able to set yourself up for the turn 2 left-hander and then through the hook section, the question mark, if you will, going through the back section of the circuit. He's looking pretty good so far. A tiny bit twitchy, but not as twitchy as Bang was.
Yes, Roadhog driving for the Nivus Rayahadis team. And there's another part to that team name that I won't attempt to pronounce, but I'm just happy enough having nailed down the first part. He's 7/10 down on the time set by Bang, and he currently has a best qualifying of 6th, so he'll be aiming to beat that tonight. And that 6th place qualifying came in the Watkins Glen round last week.
Yeah, his best race results so far this season are 2 6th places, which he scored the first round in Renault and the most recent time out of Watkins Glen. That's a big wobble out of the bridge chicane. That's going to cut very large chunks out of his lap time. He's half a second down, though, so he can still redeem himself.
Very spectacular camera angles we're getting here in Montreal for these qualifying laps. It's remarkable. Pretty much everyone we've looked at, it looks like the car's trying to spit itself into the wall at every opportunity. Here's the Yahoo section. Does Road Dogg make it through safely? He's done that bit. Now he can do the next bit before he can heave a sigh of relief, if I can get my worms right. To the line, Road Dogg he's maintained a similar advantage, so he equaled Bang in the second part of the lap, but he's still had that deficit to Bang, so he slots into 2nd place currently.
We now see Netherelmian taking to the track to start his flying lap in the first of the Porsche 935s. Nether hasn't been able to match the performance of the other 935s, those being the Pink Pig Porsches, and he's very hot into turn 2, and he's gone off into the grass. That's going to be a big chunk of time lost. May even be a track cut violation. The time is still going on our side of things, so we're not sure if he's received that violation yet. We will see.
Yeah, he normally would exit out of the lap if that had been a track cut violation, but of course, it's a long way from the hairpin to the first corner of your next lap, so he will have not had the brake temperature, unless he was specifically warming his brakes on that outlap down the back straight. The brake temperature is very, very low by the time you get to that first corner.
That's exactly right. His best race result so far this season is a 5th place finish that he scored in Barbagallo, which is an unlikely place for a Porsche 935 to do well, given the tight and twisty nature of that circuit. So he's able to capitalise on a few other mistakes that some of the other drivers made, as well as a little bit of handy pit strategy, I believe. As he goes around towards the hairpin, his second sector split is going to be 4/10 up, good. So great time from Nether so far.
So he's rounded the hairpin quite nicely indeed. A lot of cars we've seen going a little bit deep into the braking zone there, but Nether got it pulled up very, very nicely. So his brake temperature is at a handy level now. Through the Yahoo section, we've seen some of the Porsches absolutely on the limit. Can't wait to see Berto and Sam Smith when we get to the pointy end of this qualifying session going through there. But for now, Nether is the focus. And through this absolutely terrifying part of the track, Nether has done it perfectly. This is going to be pole position. Mark my words. He comes across the line.
Just.
I've done it again. That was so close. If that hadn't have been pole position provisionally, then Nether would have had me up for breakfast.
It's Brenton Foley who takes to the track now in one of the Ford Capris. He looks pretty sideways through turn 2 already, and he's had a big lock up through turn 3. That's going to cut into his lap time a little bit, but as we've seen so far this season, Brenton Foley's lap times in qualifying, although they've been very spectacular and they look like they're not going to work at all, they've often been rapid, haven't they, Stairs?
They have, and we just saw an example of how quick Bang was in the final sector. Oh, all sorts of out of control. Brenton Foley somehow hangs onto it through turns 7 and 8. He's up by 0.6 of a second. Let's just enjoy this show.
Unbelievable. He drifted it way out wide on the exit of that, got all the way into the marbles, and somehow kept it together. He breaks into the bridge chicane now, and he's still on the track so far. Gets a couple of wheels to the grass. You'd hope not. I want to say this track only sets the lines, the track limits, that is, to just the pavement, because he's 7/10 down. You'll see on the exit of this hairpin, as he gets a little bit of the back end stepped out, it's full pavement to the end. He gets 4 wheels off the track.
Yeah.
But I was doing that a little bit in practice, and it wasn't giving me violations at all.
It's inconsistent, isn't it?
It's very inconsistent. We'll have to see if his lap time holds up by the time he reaches the end. Of course, if he can keep it on the track for the rest of it. That's huge. 2 wheels up in the air on the exit of that one. Somehow keeps it pointing in the right direction. He's going to do the same through the final chicane. That's absolutely rapid. He makes it at the end. It's a 1 minute 34.682, and he's up by 1,000th of a second. Unbelievable.
Wow, that's a hard act to follow. As we turn our attention to Madbird, he was all up on two wheels. It was the seventh wonder of the world that he did keep it out of the fence, I should say.
That's absolutely phenomenal stuff. You can always rely on Brenton Foley to be able to produce a stunning visual spectacle, whether it's on the lap time or on track or both for his qualifying session. Now we're looking at Madbird in the Nikon R-Tech Ford Capri as he rounds the circuit. He's 5,000th of a second down, so he's looking very close, and if he can keep his nose nice and tidy, I'd say he'll be up on Brenton Foley by the time he comes back around to the control line.
Absolutely, Matty. You saw how clean he made it through turns 7 and 8. That was where Brenton Foley had the mother and father of all saves. The car was just trying to get away from him, and it took him an eternity to wrestle back control, and that's where he ended up losing about 1.4 seconds to Nether at that time, because he had been 7/10 up and then he was 7/10 down. Well, Madbird's now 7/10 up, best part of, as he goes into the second sector split. But we saw how strong Brenton Foley was through that final sector. What does Madbird have here?
I want to see what he does for this chicane, because I saw him during practice on the run through here. He got two wheels in the dirt trying to turn it in, and he managed to get sideways the entire way through that section. He keeps it nice and tight now. But yeah, if he's 7/10 up through the second sector, who knows what's going to happen by the time he gets to the finish line. He's looking pretty quick so far. I'd say he's going to get a 1 minute 34, and he has.
Beautiful.
He's still 7/10 up. Great lap, 133.95 from Madbird.
That was a flawless lap from Madbird, and he'll be pretty happy with that, I should say. I don't know how close to the limit he was, but it looked fast without being risky, and he wasn't being too conservative. So he depending on what happens with the rest of these guys here, there's a good chance that he could equal his best qualifying of the season so far, which is 5th.
Decent match is out on track now in the Porsche 935. It's the first time we've seen him since the Barbagallo round, of course, having missed last time out in Watkins Glen along with Birdo. He's 2/10 up, so he's looking pretty good so far in that Porsche 935, taking advantage of the straights on this circuit.
Absolutely right, and Disamaj is rejoining us after a week off. He, like Sam Smith, missed the round at Watkins Glen last week, so eager to make up for lost time and claw some ground back on the points table. And of course, that all starts with qualifying. And my goodness gracious me, he's found some time through this middle sector of the racetrack. 1.4 seconds up there on Madbird, but he's lost a bit of time through that hairpin, all deep, very, very deep, and very, very messy through the apex.
Very sloppy through there. Mind you, is rapid through this chicane though, so he's going to try and make up as much of that time as he possibly can. Looking to get a good qualifying result so he can convert that into a good race result, which he's not had too many of this season. Unfortunately, some bad luck and a little bit of two-wheel action there from Disamaj across that final corner. He crosses the line, 1 minute 33.0. That's almost 9/10 up from Madbird's time, so he sits on provisional pole right now.
Yeah, he did a good job with that lap. He lost a lot of time in that final sector, but he had enough of an advantage that he still was able to come across the line and set a 33, which is actually faster than what he did in practice by about 1/10 of a second. Now, last week, Goofball Antics blew us away in qualifying by setting a lap time something like 2 seconds faster than what he had done in practice up to that point. So is this Goofball's chance to throw something at us that we weren't expecting?
Yeah, it was incredible. And Goofball Antics is often regarded as a qualifying specialist in ARW circles. He's up just narrowly, not even 1/10 of a second is the gap, but he is up. So let's see if he can keep that pace going all around the track. Of course, Goofball Antics is currently the championship leader, having finished on the podium for every single race so far this season. 2 seconds, 2/3, and a race win in Belle Isle.
And he's not got a pole position so far this season, although he has surprised us a few times in the Caterhams with some pole positions that were unforecast. But best qualifying so far of 2nd in this championship. He's done that twice, last week and in Sebring. So neither of those races he won. It was the race in Belle Isle where he qualified down in 7th that he won. He's up by 0.5 at the moment though, and unfortunately he's going to be losing time through. Oh, big moment moment there for Goofball Antics, all up on the curb, straight into the wall, bleeding time, so aggressive through that section of the racetrack. And your guess is as good as mine as to what that's going to mean for him. I don't know why he's decided to try and destroy the car before he even crossed the line. He was still up by 6.5 tenths of a second.
That was very strange. I couldn't imagine. He must have been absolutely speedy through that final sector to be able to pull off a time like that, especially when he was crossing the line sideways and heading straight for the fence. So that BMW 320 is going to be one to look out for. I'd hazard a guess and say he's going to extend his championship lead here today.
Well, his mid-corner speed must have been absolutely electric through those chicanes for him to actually gain that much. It shows how much the Porsches have to slow down to make it through that part of the racetrack. Absolutely rapid. But what is bizarre to me is that he went to wreck his car in frustration, I suppose, at what he'd done going into the wall before he'd crossed the line. If he loses out on pole position by a tenth of a second, he'll be kicking himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have to see what the BMW 320 can do without a skewed control, as we saw with Goofball Antics as he crossed the line sideways. Of course, Xerus is now out on track.
Oh, we're just watching Resist. Unfortunately, he's invalidated his lap. So he's gone back to the pits. It must have been that second chicane, and Resist is going to be starting from the back. So that's very, very unlucky. Coming off the back of his best qualifying session of the season last week, where he ended up finishing in third place, which was where he qualified. Unfortunately, he's going to have to do it from the back of the grid tonight.
It's very unfortunate. I have to apologise. I was looking at the wrong car completely there going around qualifying. I thought it was Xerus who was on his flying lap, but he, alas, is on his out lap as he gets up on two wheels on the exit of that chicane as well. I'd say that curb has a BMW 320 magnet built into it because those cars are absolutely nailing it. Xerus now hits the final straight. Let's see if he can do the same sort of thing as Goofball did in the BMW 320. Jumps on the anchors into turn 2. Gets it turned in, misses the apex just narrowly, but he's still on track and he's looking absolutely rapid through the question mark section, going through turn 3 and then into the turn 4 kink.
Yeah, Xerus was the faster of the two 320s in practice. He went a bit... Well, he was kind of anonymous at the start of the season. Found his feet in Barbagallo and then was anonymous in Watkins Glen again last week. So tonight, he seems to be back on pace. 4 tenths up on Goofball Antics so far, so he looks like he's going to be the one to challenge the Porsche 935 Turbos tonight.
Yeah, if not for Resist's brilliant podium showing last time out of Watkins Glen, Xerus would have had a second podium to his name. It would have been a little bit further up the point standings, but as it stands, his last race finish was a 4th, and as I say, you're only as good as your last race. But we know Xerus. If you know Xerus from ARW Season 7, he absolutely dominated that season in the Caterham, so we know he's a quick steerer. We know that he's suddenly got the grips, or not suddenly, but he's finally got the grips of the BMW 320 after those few races. He's 7 tenths up, almost 8 tenths up through the second sector. So this is going to be a phenomenal lap from Xerus. It's going to be very, very fast, and it's going to be very hard to beat for the rest of the field.
I believe this is the circuit that he chose. Everyone in Apex Rear Wing got to choose a circuit, and it was then voted upon, and I believe this was Xerus's choice. He loves this version of the circuit. Big two-wheel action coming out of the final corner for Xerus. He comes across the line, and again, what is he doing?
Oh, he's got a track cut violation.
Track cut.
Yeah, on that very last section of the track there. Once he got 2 wheels up on the final chicane, he dipped 2 wheels into the dirt, and that was lap over for Xerus, which is a huge shame. That was on track to be an incredible lap, but he's thrown it all away, unfortunately, and Goofball must have suspected he did the exact same thing, I'd say.
Perhaps, but he has registered a time. That was super weird and super disappointing for Xerus, so he becomes the latest victim in a string of cars not to set a time, preceded, of course, by his brother Resist. And it means to say that Madbird will indeed finish 5th in this qualifying session. His best qualifying session, equal best qualifying session in this season so far. Goofball Antics will be 3rd at worst because the two Pink Pigs out on track now with Birdo 4 tenths up through the first sector split.
Huge margin from Birdo already in the first sector of this circuit. And yeah, I'm just looking at the big moment there. He got 2 wheels up and he wasn't able to corner that bridge chicane. So that's going to lose him a little bit of time. But I think it's going to be inconsequential given the margin that he had for the first sector. We look at him now and he's 8 tenths up. Exactly what I was saying. Inconsequential. He's on fire. It's going to be the main battle for qualifying. It's going to be between Birdo and his teammate Sam Smith, I think.
Yeah, and Sam's been absolutely rapid in this practice session. So he is definitely the favourite for pole. Berto's the one under pressure. He's missing the last few rounds of this championship, so he ideally wants to build a bit of a buffer. He wants to get some wins, try and get a championship lead that is then unassailable. It's a bit of a tall order as he rounds the final corner, and he's going to come across the line. Is it good enough to beat Goofball Antics? It is by 1.4 seconds. He's in the 31s. He did a 30 in practice, but Berto, I think there was a little bit of margin in that lap as we turn our attention to Sam Smith.
Let's see if Sam can find that margin that Berto missed out on. It looks pretty rough through turns 2 and 3, but he may be able to claw that time back. Of course, as we've been saying, is never over until it's over in these qualifying sessions, but sometimes it's over before it even starts, where you have to make sure that all 4 wheels stay on the track through most of these grass runoff areas. And we've got 4 cars as a result of those track violations who haven't set a time. So once Sam Smith comes across the line, that'll be only 11 cars out of 15 who have set times around here. He's 4 tenths down. So he's roughly on par with what Goofball Antics is doing this time when he was going around the track.
That is a lot of ground to make up. You said he was a bit messy through the question mark sequence of corners, and he's having questions asked of him by his teammate right now. So it looked a bit of a conservative end to the lap for Berto from my perspective, but sometimes, you know, something that looks slow is actually fast and can be hard to beat. He's clawed back most of that advantage in the middle sector. Remarkable. Down to less than 1/10 of a second between Sam Smith and Berto. It comes down to this final sector.
He was faultless through the bridge chicane where Berto made that error, of course, getting up on 2 wheels, and that's where Sam Smith made a lot of that time up. He's not super fast.
Fully committed.
He is fully committed, but he got his lines a little bit wrong. Of course, Sam Smith is almost perfect. Near enough too. No, he's thrown it away. He's launched right across that chicane. That's going to be a track cut for sure. He'll cross the line, but no time will come up. And Berto is on pole position for the Montreal 1988 race.
He was giving it everything. He must have seen how close he was to Berto, and it was all or nothing from Sam Smith's perspective. And Sam is another car that'll be starting at the back. So that is very, very good news for Goofball Antics, who leads the championship over Sam Smith by 11 points. And so he looks set to grow that margin. You said that earlier tonight. Could be a night where Goofball Antics grows his championship margin, and with Sam Smith starting from the back, no doubt he will make his way through the grid. But Berto has a fantastic advantage. And so too Goofball Antics starting on the front row.
Yeah, when I said Goofball was going to extend his championship margin, I didn't think it would be courtesy of Sam Smith throwing away his qualifying lap. But anything can happen in this championship. As we've seen so far, it'll be really interesting to see how Sam Smith is going to be able to go starting all the way back at the rear of the grid. If he can keep his nose out of trouble, not make contact with anyone else on the way up to the front, where he will surely find himself again, as all the cars pour out of the pit lane now for a final 10-minute practice session before the race gets underway.
So let's just quickly run you through what happened in that qualifying session. Berto got pole position with a 31 flat, 1.4 seconds ahead of Goofball Antics in the BMW 320, and that is his equal best qualifying session of this championship. Third place that he'll start from position 2 on the grid. Disamaj is also going to be pretty pleased with where he starts the race, up in 3rd place. And he's only done that once before. Let's hope it goes a little bit better than the last time that happened for him, which was in Belle Isle. So, beg your pardon, distracted by something. Madbird will start at a 4th place, so this does become his best qualifying session of this DRM Championship. Brenton Foley will start behind him or alongside him in 5th place. Nether starts out of 6th. That's a great starting position for him. Bang in 7th and Roadhog in 8th. Now, Rody and Greg Tara had mistakes on their lap. They'll start in 9th and 10th, and they start ahead of 5 guys who failed to set a time due to the track cuts. Those guys being Xerus, Sam Smith, Resist, and Tyrrell. And I say 5 guys. Pablo actually didn't set a time at all, and that is why he's also in that group of guys who have not set a time in qualifying.
We have seen in a few races so far this season some very unfortunate start line incidents between guys starting at the back and guys in front of them not getting the launches they wanted. So these practice starts that we're going to be seeing very soon in this practice session are going to be crucial for everybody to get a feel for the clutch and know how these cars get off the line. because no one wants to be involved in any one of those incidents again. Of course, Birdo DNF'd from what I believe was the Sebring event as a result of... No, I apologise. It was the Barbagallo event as a result of a collision with D-Samaj on the start line. And it's not the only instance we've seen so far this season. So a few of those guys, particularly Sam Smith, really need to stay out of trouble, and they'll be making sure that everyone can get this race going hassle-free.
Well, one thing that they do have going for them in this instance is that we are running on a circuit that's used in Formula One, and as such, the grid boxes are spaced apart accordingly, a bit further away than when we visited Barbagallo and the Supercars grid, which is much more tightly packed than this one. So it gives them a little bit more time to react if someone does balk off the line, and they can perhaps go around them without losing control of the car or get out of the throttle and not lose too much boost.
Yeah, and the grid positions from in each row are offset almost halfway to the next row. So it's almost like a zigzag formation of the grid, so there's plenty of space between cars. So that should prove a big part of the difference. You see a bit of an incident through that tight and twisty section there with no room for error on either side. Looked like D-Samaj rotated the car and just got collected by one of the yellow Interceptor Ford Capris, I believe. Or was it somebody else? I'm not sure.
All I saw was wheels flying everywhere. Not their finest moment, but that's why they're getting all of this out of their system right now and warm up, because we don't want anything like that happening on the race start itself. We've earned ourselves a little break, I think, Matty. We'll have a quick break, on the other side of which we will come back with all the action from the round 6 Montreal DRM race. Don't go anywhere.
Introducing GM Holden's brand new Kingswood. Oh, I want me one of these. Can you tell me all about it? Sure, why not? It comes in a gutsy 8 or economical 6. With variable control, air conditioning, AM radio, hydrocentric glidomatic glass windbreaker cleaning system, disc brakes, rubber tires. Kingswood, it's Australia's driving future.
Welcome back to Montreal for the 6th round of the Apex Rear Wing DRM Championship. We are in the warm-up session. Sam Smith, we thought was going to be the pole sitter, but he'll be starting near the back of the grid. His teammate Birdo, having taken pole position ahead of the championship leader Goofball Antics.
Yeah, very, very interesting qualifying session. We saw a lot of unexpected results, particularly Sam Smith starting so far down the grid. He's going to be starting from what I believe is 15th? No, not 15th position. 11th position on the grid. So that's quite a ways to go for Sam Smith to be able to claw back through the field and make his way up into the podium spots where his car is quick enough to belong, of course, with it being in second position in the championship right now, with a bit of a margin to goofball antics in the BMW 320. And as we saw in qualifying, that BMW 320 has the potential, as we see, quite a bit of calamity on the run into pit lane.
Let's hope they're a bit better than that in the race itself. The pit entry here, very tricky. You don't actually, it's not like, and that's another difference between the Formula 1 version of the circuit and this one, is that it's not a straight run into the pit lane. There's a big chicane as soon as you get there.
There certainly is. So that's going to have something for the drivers to be considerate of as they go in for their pit stops. And we haven't really had a chance to talk much about pit strategy, have we, Says?
No, and if there is anything to be thankful for the Sam Smith fans, it's the fact that we have walls close at hand and on this racetrack, and that means there is a distinct possibility of safety cars, and that opens up the strategy a little bit. So it means that if Sam can have a good start to the race and clear a lot of cars quickly, get near the front group, and then there's a safety car, then it's game on again if you're Sam Smith, because it means that you'll be able to fight on an even keel once more without the disadvantage of the field spread that can happen in the early laps of a race. He wants to do that cleanly though, and it certainly depends on when the safety car falls. We've certainly seen that be an advantage to the BMW 320 drivers, which, if that does mean that they can no-stop like we have seen in the past, it gives Goofball Antics a significant advantage.
Yeah, as long as Sam Smith's not the one who's starting that safety car, of course. He's been pretty good throughout this season so far. In every race where he's showed up, so the first 4 races of this season, he's been on the podium for all 4 of them. A second, a third, and 2 wins in his most recent outings. So he's on a very hot streak, and he knows how to keep a car on the track and keep his nose out of trouble. Let's hope he can keep that up in this race.
Exactly right. Even in the races where he didn't do too well, Belle Isle probably being the most notable example, he had a few notable incidents in that race. He still finished in 3rd place now, albeit that was through a little bit of attrition. Probably should have finished 4th or 5th, given what his car went through in that race with contact with the wall. But others did the same thing, so that's why he was able to salvage a podium out of that race.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was mostly down to luck at that point, how he's able to finish in 3rd despite all the incidents that were happening. And I'd say we're going to see a similar situation here at Montreal 1988 version, because, as I was saying earlier, the margins for error are very, very small, almost minimal, if you will. So if these guys aren't keeping it, as long as these guys are keeping it on the track and straight and narrow, it should be okay. But how likely is that? Let's be real.
Let's be real. Well, Sam Smith certainly has the pace. We saw it in practice. He was 8/10 faster than Berto, so if he replicates that in the race, then he might put Berto under a bit of pressure. It's interesting, in Watkins Glen last week, we didn't really think that the 320s would be a factor at all, but the winning margin in the end was only 2 seconds between Berto and Goofball Antics. Now, looking at analysing that post-race, Berto made a bit of a miscalculation with his fuel. He had to fuel save quite a lot at the end of that race, and what looked like a fairly massive gap in the early stages of that race turned out to be quite a close finish indeed. So Berto might be a bit worried about Goofball Antics here on a track that may not necessarily advantage the Porsches as much as the last circuit in Watkins Glen did.
Yeah, they're roughly the same speed, the last 2 tracks, Watkins Glen and this one, of course. They've got the same sort of nature of long straights, but not as many fast corners here at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Of course, there's a few fast chicanes, so it ends up on roughly the same par, but tyre wear is going to be a little bit more skewed in favour of the BMW 320s, I think, because a lot of the corners are, the long corners especially, are very slow. So there's not going to be a huge amount of wear being put through those front tyres especially. And I'd say the BMW 320s are going to have a lot more time in their hands when it comes to pit stop strategy.
Well, I remind you of Goofball Antics' qualifying lap. It looked like he'd thrown it away, but he was carrying so much speed through those back chicanes that he still managed to finish ahead of one of the Porsches that he was battling at the time for position in qualifying. So those 320s can carry an awful lot of speed through the mid-corner, and these are the type of corners that really are the BMW 320s bread and butter. They can carry so much more speed than the Porsches. The Porsches have to slow down so much for them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The BMW 320, of course, being the lightest car on the grid, so it has no problem at all keeping up through those corners, whereas the Porsche 935 has to back off just a little bit. Everyone's gridding up now to take the formation lap, so this race is very close to getting started as we see horns blazing and lights flashing all over the place.
We do. Warm-up is over and warm-up lap has begun. Berto in pole position. Matty, do you want to take us through the grid?
It is Berto in pole position, having a great lap there with a couple of errors here and there ahead of Goofball Antics, who thought he'd thrown it away, but he hadn't, and he's starting from second on the grid next to Berto in the BMW 320. Diesamaj starts from third position in the Porsche 935, looking to get his first podium of the season, having missed out on a few of those opportunities due to accidents he's had throughout the season. Madbird starts from fourth position on the grid in the Ford Capri, sponsored by Nikon Artec, of course. Brenton Foley for PBF Race Engineering is behind him in fifth position, with Nether in sixth in another one of the Porsche 935s. Bang is starting from seventh in the Ford Capri Interceptor style livery. Roadhog and the Toyota Celica will be starting from eighth on the grid. Rody is ninth, what I believe is his best start yet this season. Let's see what he can do from ninth position. Greg Tara is in 10th position, having made an error of his own as well as Brody in the qualifying session. And then we go to the back five, who were not able to post times due to not setting times at all or making track cut violations. So 11th on the grid will be Xeris in the BMW 320, ahead of Sam Smith, who we all expected to be on the front row or on pole position. But due to that violation of track cutting on the final corner of his lap, he threw that one completely away. Pablo starts from 13th on the grid. Resist is 14th after a similar issue that he faced in the BMW M1, which is quite fast in practice, actually. And, of course, he was a podium sitter last time out, so he's getting to grips with that BMW M1 race by race. And Tyrrell in the Jeff Vader Racing Ford Capri will start this race from 15th and last on the grid as they all get their tyres warm through the back chicane now.
That's exactly right. And best qualifying session of this season for Bang as well. So he did quite a decent job. It was the first flying lap at the time that we'd seen without someone having a problem. And it was a very, very good lap from him. And up to this point, he's had a bit of a rough time of it in qualifying. 13th and 11th and not registering a time in Barbagallo, I think it was. The previous, actually, sorry, not Barbagallo, it was Watkins Glen, where he got a track violation. But
Greg Torres has been spun into the wall on the warm-up lap.
Oh, no. Let's see if we can catch a replay of that before the race starts. Now, did he get some help? Yes, he did. It was Ben Rhodes, who's gone straight into the back of him there. Obviously wasn't paying attention to what he was doing, and he's gone straight up the back of Greg Tara. So Greg Tara hopefully not with significant damage from that incident. What a bizarre racing incident before the race has even started.
There may be some heated words exchanged there, and I just want to clarify those final five positions on the grid as they are different to the results I got on the live timing service. Resist will be 11th, Sam Smith is 12th, Pablo 13th, Zero is 14th, Tyrrell is 15th and last. The red lights are on now. 3 lights, 4 lights, they're away.
There we go. So Berto's got a fantastic start against Diesamaj, has gone absolutely nowhere and has been passed by a number of cars. Bang with the absolute best start we've seen from anyone, up 4 spots into third. See you later, and we've already got a yellow flag flying. Diesamaj threading the needle. We've had all sorts of carnage in the background. We've got about 2 cars facing backwards, probably more. We're going to catch a replay. Oh, Ben Rhodes Ben Rhodes actually got cut off by Pablo. Different fortunes for the 2 main force racing guys, and then meanwhile Roadhog had a significant accident with a number of cars. Poor old Greg Tara can't catch a break. He's been involved in 2 accidents in 30 seconds, and Xeris at the back of that as well. Absolute disaster for pretty much everyone in the back half of the grid. Sam Smith has made his way up to 8th, so he's somehow managed to avoid most of that carnage. Back at the front, Berto leads from Madbird and Bang in 3rd.
Very messy start, which is never what we want to see, but Greg Tara just can't catch a break. He got spun on the warm-up lap, of course, by Rody, and he got caught up in another one of those incidents at turn 1. Rody just pulled off the track to let Greg Tara through, or unless he just overshot the bridge chicane. So Greg Tara is in 12th position now, but Roadhog is bearing down on him, and Roadhog is looking to make up time as well. It was, of course, Greg Tara, Roadhog, and Xeris who got caught up in that first corner scuffle as they all go through that fast chicane now. Let's see how everyone can do. Everyone's going very wide off that inside apex, and Brenton Foley got 2 wheels up there. But everyone seems to be keeping it relatively together. No one's crashing at that point of the track, because if anyone goes off there, that's bound to be a safety car for sure.
Now, Sam Smith has made his way up to the back of Resist now. He's in 7th place, attacking for 6th. So Resist has had a fantastic start, made up a number of positions. We didn't see exactly how Goofball Antics had such a bad start. He's now back in 9th place. So unseen to us, we were obviously looking at Decimag's theatrics on the opening lap and then the Roadhog incident. It looks like Goofball Antics has got involved somehow or balked it significantly off the line, but he's got a lot of work to do, and that has completely changed the championship prospect from qualifying.
Yeah, Bang lost his 3rd position as well on the 2nd lap on the run into turn 2. He just got way too hot and slid off into the grass a little bit. He was able to get back on the track without losing too much time, but it was just enough to lose the spot to Brenton Foley, who now sits in 3rd position, having made up 2 spots from where he started. And now we've got Decimag all over the back of Bang, trying to get that pass done as soon as possible, with Sam Smith putting double the pressure on behind him. Yeah,
Sam Smith made the move up on Resist, and now he doesn't know which way to go because there's a bit of a roadblock up ahead of him as Bang goes deep at the hairpin. That opens the door for Decimag to go up the inside. Decimag, though, not getting the better drive. It's a drag race down to this very, very fast section of the racetrack where you absolutely don't want to go side by side, but Bang has to lift out and he loses 2 positions for his courteousness, and Sam Smith goes through. But now, does Bang have the inside as they get up to what is now called the Wall of Champions? No, he doesn't. And he's going to come under pressure from Resist now. He's fighting hard. Resist is going to go for the outside. So now Sam Smith is up 7 spots from where he started and is putting pressure on Decimag.
Yeah, Sam Smith just had way more drive than that Ford Capri going through the back half of the track. So there was no way that Bang was going to be able to keep up. He's back down to 7th position where he started. So that great start for him has unfortunately been reduced to nothing as he's back to where he qualified in that 7th spot. It is still Birdo who leads, and Madbird is still sitting in 2nd, having made up 2 spots from the 4th position he qualified in, with Brenton Foley facing the same fortunes right now. So great start for those two.
Cackling away at the front, though, is Berto with a 6-second advantage while all of this chaos is ensuing behind him. So he'll be quite happy with the way this race has played out so far, especially with Goofball Antics down in 8th place. He's made up 1 position from the last time we checked on him. So a bit of a gaggle of cars now, with Brenton Foley occupying the final spot on the podium. Behind him, the 2 Porsche 935 Turbos going side by side into the hairpin, and Sam Smith getting a little bit impatient. Now Decimag with an opportunistic move up the inside of Brenton Foley. So he was under pressure from Sam Smith, and instead of losing the position, he makes the position, and now he's back in podium contention where he started this race. Doesn't really tell the story for him. And now Decimag has made his way through. They all bump over the curbs. Somehow none of them have got spat out into the wall, and Sam Smith stays ahead of Brenton Foley for the time being.
That was massive. These 2 Porsches of Decimag and Sam Smith are going past all these other cars like they're lap traffic. Brenton Foley is back in 5th position where he started his race. He'll be seeing if he can maintain that position as they go side by side in front of him. Decimag just keeps it ahead, but it's nose to tail as they go through turn 3. Sam Smith is all over the back of him, pushing him all the way around this circuit. And as much as those two are going to be battling, it's not going to be costing them much time relative to the cars around them. They're already all over the back of Madbird, or will be in the next couple of corners at the very least. Sam Smith has a look through the fast sweeping right-hander. He's not going to do much here. He may have another look here. No, he's going to keep himself nice and steady, sitting behind Decimag at the moment, waiting until the first big braking zone that comes up. No, Decimag is around! Sam Smith has hit him! This is amazing! Unbelievable stuff! Sam Smith is around, and he's stopped on the track. He's waiting for the traffic to clear so he can go back. He's rotated the car, but he's down in 8th position now, having just been passed. He's going to lose 2 more spots to Nether and Xeris, and Sam Smith is in 10th.
That was so unlucky for Sam Smith. There was absolutely nothing he could do. Decimag lost the car, and that gap just disappeared in front of Sam Smith in a blind part of the racetrack, so he had to wait for everyone to go by, including his championship rival, Goofball Antics, who's now up into 7th place. Sam drops to 10th behind Nether and Xeris, who are fighting one another quite fiercely. So after having a fantastic start, Sam Smith has it all to do, and to rub salt in the wound, his teammate Birdo sets the fastest lap of the race.
What a shame. And I'm just watching now Bang rotating on the exit of that fast chicane. Hasn't caused a safety car. He's put it through 360 degrees and he's still going, but he's going to be causing a little bit of wear on his tyres. And if he keeps that up, those things are going to be feeling like 50-cent pieces around this Montreal circuit.
And look at who's behind him. He's got this trio bearing down on him of Nether, Sam Smith, and Xeris fighting quite closely. Now, Nether's gone a bit wide at turn 1. He makes the apex of turn 2, though. A little bit of curb. Sam Smith is going to be putting him under pressure if he doesn't get past by Xeris before the corner, though. Xeris got a much better launch off turn 2. And they stay line astern. So, a bit wide there for Nether, but nothing doing for Sam Smith. And they stay line astern.
That was a very awkward section there for Sam Smith. He was all over the back of Nether, and Nether was going a lot slower than Sam Smith was expecting. He had to really pull his foot up off the throttle and pull it up very quickly. He's still behind and he hasn't lost any position to Xeris yet, but Xeris is all over the back of him, trying to pile on as much pressure as he can. As Sam Smith goes very wide, he's got a wheel in the dirt, he's clocked the wall on the way through, and that's a huge impact for Sam Smith. He's upside down through the bridge chicane. That's unbelievable. Could this race get any worse for Sam Smith? He's rotated the car back onto the roof, and he's going to keep going. He's still in 10th position with that huge gap back to Roadhog behind him as Roadhog gets past him now. What a shame for Sam Smith.
Yeah, Nether won't be too happy about that. That was a big impact with the rear of his car into the wall. He got 2 wheels on the grass. That's what caused that. And disastrous for Sam Smith on his return. The last time he raced with us was in Barbagallo, a sublime win. That car is crabbing badly. He has to come into the pit lane for repairs. There's no way he's going to be able to make it. So that has absolutely destroyed his chance for race victory. It may well destroy his chances of a decent points finish, but he's got to get it home for the championship. Goofball Antics is currently sat in 6th place. He's going to pick up a handful of points. It's probably good for Sam that he's not any further up than that. Did he get it stopped? Did he get it close to the speed limit? As he came into the pits, it's all falling apart.
I'm just watching Decimage now. He was in 3rd position, but he made an error somewhere around the track. I'm just going through replay tapes, trying to figure out where it was. But these Porsche 935s are really in the wars now. I don't think Decimage has made an error. He's just been a little bit slow. Oh no, he got 2 wheels up and he almost spun it out on the exit of that first chicane there. So he's lost quite a bit of time, and Decimage is now down into 5th position. He's hit the fence and he's lost a wheel!
What?
This is unbelievable! I don't believe this!
We're going to catch the replay. And a penalty for Bang. Has he already reached his limit for track cut violations? So it's all falling apart for Bang. Let's catch the replay now of Decimage. And he lost it. Oh my goodness. That looks like that was a very weird incident. He just accelerated into the wall, it looked like. Yes, he was slightly out of control, but he must have been flustered after that incident with Sam Smith. I wonder if there's words being exchanged in the Discord server. Meanwhile, out front, Birdo enjoys an 18-second advantage over Madbird, who now has Brenton Foley as his nearest rival behind him, who's up on two. Sorry, that's Madbird up on 2 wheels. So Brenton Foley coming under pressure from Resist, who's had a fantastic start, up 7 spots from where he started. So it's a recovery given the carnage we've seen so far. And Bang has now DNF'd.
So we've got 2 DNFs so far in this race. Decimage from that incident we saw just before where he lost his wheel, and Bang has decided to pull it into the pits and call it a day as well. So 13 cars still running out on track at the moment. What a chaotic first 10 minutes to this race.
Yeah, and I was just looking at the timer, Matty. 10 minutes is all it's been. Can we count off the things that have happened? The number of accidents that we've seen, the number of cars that go from the back of the grid to the front of the grid and vice versa, or in Sam Smith's case, from the back to the front and then all the way back to the back. The thing that will be good for Sam Smith, although he is last right now, he will gain 1 more position when they get past where Bang was, but he should potentially have the pace if his car is fixed to get a couple more positions, perhaps Rody, maybe Pablo, depending on how far behind he is. And anyone else who drops out of that race, that'll be points for him.
Yeah, he will make up a spot once he goes past pit lane, but it won't make him any less last. He'll still be in 13th position, which is the amount of cars that are running on this track at the moment. Rody lets him pass now, so it is 12th position for Sam Smith as Rody decides that's not his battle to contest. So 1 more spot for Sam Smith, only 11 more to go.
The walls seem to be his enemy. Berto not so affected by it, but of course he's not so much under pressure. But in Belle Isle, Sam Smith had a few issues with the wall. And here in Montreal, he's having a few issues with the wall. It's worth noting that if it comes down to a final race showdown, the final race in Salvador is a street circuit and much tighter than this one at that. So that may well affect the way the championship finishes.
Yeah, Salvador is going to be a race of attrition if I've ever seen one before, and I honestly can't wait for it. It's going to be spectacular to watch. It's going to be very difficult to commentate on, as I've already seen so far in the first 10 minutes of this race. It's just been very hard to keep track of everything that's been happening. It's starting to ease up a little bit now. We've
it is, but what I do want to bring your attention to is this battle for the podium. Madbird's only about a second ahead of Brenton Foley, who's coming under a huge amount of pressure from Resist, Goofball Antics, and Xerus isn't that far behind them either, and he's lapping pretty consistently at the moment as well.
Yeah, this is going to be a fantastic scrap in the next few laps, if they can all keep it out of the fence, which I can't say for sure. I can't pinky promise you on that one, I'm afraid, viewers. So keep your eyes peeled. It is Brenton Foley in third position. Resist is really flexing the muscles of that BMW M1, showing its true potential around a track like this. As they go through this fast chicane, it's going to be Goofball and Brenton Foley who are going to keep the most time as Brenton Foley goes MotoGP on the exit of that one. 2 wheels on my wagon as Goofball tries to capitalize and he's in the wall. Goofball's been rotated into the fence. What a shame for Goofball Antics. Through no fault of his own, he just copped a little bit of contact from Resist there in the BMW M1. And Goofball is all the way down to 6th position now, 4 spots down from where he started. Xerus has got the benefit of that. He's up into 5th position now, 9 spots up from where he started this race. But what a shame for Goofball Antics.
Yeah, that was probably not discretion that he should have, not the discretion he should have exercised there. He went up the inside and Resist probably tried to give him room, but really there's not much you can do on a corner like that. Goofball Antics is damaged here. The car's not behaving the way it should, and I have a feeling we're going to see him come into the pits at the end of this lap. It's all falling apart for the championship leaders, but that is exactly what Birdo wants. Birdo, as I said at the beginning of this broadcast, wants to build a bit of a gap because he's missing races towards the back end of this championship. It's falling perfectly for him.
That's exactly right. If Goofball Antics doesn't finish this race and Birdo wins it, Birdo will take the lead of the championship by a single point. So it's going to be very close at the end of this race no matter what happens. But Goofball needs to get himself back on track and get himself up the field as much as he can. Of course, it's going to be pretty hard to get a lot more points in the bag than he has at the moment, and he needs to pit for repairs, which is going to throw him down the order a lot more than he already is. But as long as he can finish this race, he's in for some points.
Sam Smith has just set the fastest lap of the race. Down in 12th, but he set the fastest lap of the race. He is a lap down, so a safety car right now would not help him because we don't have the lucky dog that lets you get your lap back. Meanwhile, in 4th and 5th place, Resist and Xerus are fighting each other, and Madbird is coming under significant pressure for Brenton Foley over 2nd place. This is by far Brenton Foley's best race so far of the season.
Yeah, Foley's been able to break away from the battle he was having early with those 3 guys, or now 2 guys, as Goofball Antics has fallen off the back. He's still in 6th position, so I don't think Goofball Antics has actually pitted yet.
No, obviously he's decided that it's more valuable, or at least less costly, in terms of time to stay on the racetrack and just run his race than it is to come in and pit for damage. Xerus now going up the inside of Resist as they go down to turn number 9, and a nice job he's done. So Xerus is on his way. Brenton Foley continues to tap away at the back of Madbird for 2nd place, but he's got Xerus right on his tail right now. Xerus is angling for a 2nd place finish right now.
Yeah, Foley just having a look through one of those sections there. Madbird gets a little bit wobbly into the hairpin, but he keeps it pinned right to the apex. So Madbird is still ahead, but Brenton Foley is pushing around this track, but Xerus is looking to take advantage. I'd say Madbird lost a lot of time there. Xerus is going to go around the outside into the chicane. This can't happen. They're all going to go back in a single file. Are they all going to keep it together through the exit? Yes, they are. But that is not a battle that should be happening at that point of the track. Keep it together, fellas. Don't put yourselves in the fence. There may be a few violations there. Is Madbird going to make it around the chicane? I think he is. But he's dropped back 2 spots, maybe 3 if Xerus if Resist gets past him. Brenton Foley. No, Birdo spun! Birdo spun in the lead!
He has. Oh, and he nearly gets collected by his teammate Sam Smith. He's got a huge advantage, though. It's still 15 seconds over Xerus. The gap has been halved. Birdo, well, that could have ended in disaster for the 2 pink pigs. It's already been disastrous for 3 of the leading drivers in the championship, with Sam Smith and Goofball Antics having huge crashes. Nearly Birdo added to that list.
He smacked the wall on the entrance, or not the entrance, or rather when he's the rear of his car was entering the concrete there. Not sure if he's got much damage on the rear suspension there. It wasn't too consequential, and of course, with this series running 75% damage, I'd say he's going to be okay for the time being. If there's any damage, he'll probably wait until he takes his pit stop for fuel and tyres and repair a little bit of it there. Take a little bit more of a time penalty just to get that car up to running order.
It's those dodgy curbs, that's what did it. It was light contact in comparison to some of the other accidents that we've seen. Oh, that was so close. That was a blind corner. It was so close to contact with Sam Smith. So the gap is now 14 seconds. That does potentially bring Xeris into play, though, from a strategy point of view, because as we know, as we saw in Watkins Glen last week, the BMW 320s have to make a much shorter pit stop than the Porsche 935. So is Xeris now potentially in that window where he could challenge for victory?
I think he is, and it's just going to show how much qualifying is not really going to matter around a track like this. If Xeris can pull off this phenomenal race result, which I think he's going to be able to do, in the BMW 320, he's already got some sizable gaps on either side of him. 15 seconds, of course, to Birdo, which will be very hard to make up unless Birdo makes another mistake. And Branson Foley behind him by a gap of about 2.9 seconds, almost 3 seconds now. So Xeris is peeling away in second position now, and that's where he likes to run. Without too much attention around him, without too many cars causing trouble, Xeris, if you put him on a track all on his own, he can really do some special stuff.
Now, these BMWs, they make their lap time in that final sector. That's where we saw Goofball Antics come unstuck. The reason he was up alongside people like Resist was because he was so much faster in the mid-corner and he thought he could get it done. When they get to the straight, the 935 turbos and the BMW M1s, they pull away, but the straights just aren't long enough, and they have to slow down much more than the BMW, if I can get my words out, than the BMW 320s. And they're just rapid through there, and that's why now that Xeris has got clear air, I'm very interested to compare his lap times to that of Birdo's, because I think this could be something special.
Well, speaking of the BMW 320s, Resist has Goofball Antics in his rearview mirrors once again. Not just his rearview mirrors, Goofball Antics in his rear bumper. He's made up that time all the way back to the rear bumper of Resist BMW M1.
Wow.
And that is now a 3-car battle from Madbird in 4th all the way down to Goofball in 6th position. So he made the right decision not to pit there. His car is a little bit skewed from that damage that he received from that head-on contact. But as you can see, it's not hampering his lap times one bit.
Well, no, he's been lapping in the 33s still. The cars ahead of him in the 34s and 35s. Yes, they've been battling one another, but Goofball Antics would have been roughly somewhere in that sort of range lap time-wise before the crash anyway. So if he manages to salvage a podium out of this race, that will be remarkable.
It'll be absolutely phenomenal, and if anyone can do it, it'll be Goofball Antics. So keep your eyes peeled there. This battle is still raging for 4th position, though. Madbird just ahead of Resist in the BMW M1. Very different cars, the M1 being the heaviest car in the field and the Capri being one of the lightest, but this track is a real equalizer. It's not really one that we're expecting to be much of an equalizer, but it's turning out to be that way, isn't it, Stairs?
Oh, it's a fantastic circuit. The Canadians know how to do things. Even if they didn't, they probably had plenty of land to build a racetrack, but they decided to chuck it in the middle of a man-made island in the center of a river in the city of Montreal, and it's just crazy enough to work. And also, a little tidbit of information is that alongside where these guys are right now is where the rowing races occurred in the 1976 Olympics, but not really something we should be talking about right now, because the BMW of M1, the BMW M1 of Resist, I should say, was shaping up to overtake Madbird through there, and that would have been very, very exciting. Now
he's having a look into turn 1.
2 wheels on the grass. Don't hit the brakes with your wheels on the grass. You'll go spinning off into the sunset. He doesn't make the corner, and that was about as predictable as apple pie on Thanksgiving. And he loses the position. He loses another position to Goofball Antics, and now it's just Madbird and Goof.
Yeah, that pass was never on. It was very, very brave from the onset. A BMW 320 may have just been able to pull that up in time and get around in the corner without touching the gravel, but not a heavy car that almost weighs 2 ton like the BMW M1 does. Speared straight through that gravel trap. Was lucky to be carrying as much pace through there as he was able to keep the momentum up and power through to the other side. But He has lost 2 positions as a result. So Resist is now down in 6th place, and this is a 2-horse race between Madbird and Goofball Antics at the moment for 4th.
It's kind of like one of those disaster films where you gradually kill off characters one by one, this race. It's turning out that way. And so far, it's just Madbird and Goofball Antics left at the moment. Goofball's just had a bit of a moment, lost a few car lengths to his rival. Let's have a bit of a stock take of this race, shall we? Berto leads the race by 14 seconds. That gap's been pegged by Xerus at around about that. In fact, down to 13.8. So depending on what part of the racetrack you measure the distance, Xerus is absolutely rapid now, and with clear air, he's absolutely loving it. Bretton Foley having by far his best race of the championship so far. He had led a lap back in Barbagallo, but he looks in good sorts tonight. Has said that he's not particularly got to grips with these cars at a number of racetracks, but tonight he's looking pretty good, and I won't say any more lest I give him the commentator's curse. Madbird, of course, having that scintillating battle with Goofball Antics. Resist recovering from an off about a lap ago and spinning up the rears. Nether's in a solid position right now in 7th place ahead of Roadhog. We haven't seen too much of. He's got a fair old gap behind him to Greg Tara, racing in just his 2nd race for Apex Rear Wing. Sam Smith recovering up into 10th place now, and he's making his way up. He's passed Tyrrell and Pablo after his big mistake, and also Rhodey. And Greg Tara is the next man on his list to check off. Tyrrell in 11th, Pablo in 12th, and Rhodey the last man running 2 laps down at the moment.
2 DNFs with Bang and Decimage having departed this race at roughly the same time for 2 separate incidents. Decimage getting a little bit shaken when he almost crashed on one of the earlier laps before going back to that same part of the track and sending it head on into the fence, losing a wheel and setting himself out. Sam Smith posts the fastest lap of the race with 1 minute 30.5. So Sam Smith is absolutely on the charge.
He's made it past Greg Tara, who's had an off by the looks of it. It's gone a lap down to the leaders.
Oh, sorry. Big move here from Goofball Antics around the outside through the fast chicane on the back straight. He's got it done. That was phenomenal. That's not a move that you ever want to try in any car, let alone one of these cars. And Goofball Antics is going straight into the pit lane.
Why? What? He's just pulled off the most phenomenal overtake we've seen all season. There it is, around the outside of the Pucker and Hope corner, and he's gone straight into the pits. Remarkable. So obviously the BMW 320s don't feel like they can make it without stopping at all, and that is his one and only pit stop we are expecting for the race, done and dusted. So he's probably hoping for a bit of an undercut now, although he's rejoined just behind Nether.
I tell you what, if this guy makes it onto the podium, he's going to have a lot to answer for in the post-race interviews.
He might be hoping he finishes 4th, collects the points, but then doesn't have to speak to us.
You might be right there. And now that battle has gone back to Madbird versus Resist for 4th position. Madbird still ahead in the Ford Capri, with Resist bearing down on him in the BMW M1. And there's not a whole lot that can really be done between those two around this track. Obviously, the BMW 320 is a remarkably different car to the rest of the ones in this field, and it's really showing its colours around a circuit like this, Montreal. But these two are just not separate enough in terms of their characteristics to be able to pass each other around the various echelons of this circuit. So it is still Madbird with Resist just behind in 5th. The straights might prove to be all the difference, but the straights are just too short. I think as Madbird elicits one of the famous stairs noises as he goes through the exit of that chicane. Honestly, I've gotten used to it. Madbird's peeled into the pits at rapid speed, so Resist benefits from that. 4th position, he's got clear air now. Madbird is making his pit stop now.
Yeah, and probably a good idea to get out of the panic of that battle that he was having with Resist. Resist was putting him under a fair bit of pressure, which means Madbird would have had to be driving in his mirrors a fair bit. So we're not quite at halfway. We're 25 minutes into this race.
Sorry, I need to draw your attention to Birdo. He's had a crash at turn 3, and Xerus is 3 seconds behind him.
Wow, let's have a replay. Turn 3. That's happened before the 20-second buffer that our replay shows. So Birdo is clearly coming under pressure, and he was on his roof for a long time, so it was up on the curb. The curb strikes again. He was trying to steer it left, but he just ran out of road, and couldn't quite get there. He had to spend an age while the game righted his car onto its four wheels, and by that stage, Xeris had eaten chunks out of that lead, down to 3 seconds, as you say.
These Pink Pig Porsches have spent far too much time this race with their wheels in the air and not on the track surface where they count. And as a result, Xeris is in second position with a gap of 3.7 seconds to Birdo in the lead in the two polar opposite vehicles of this racing series. So keep your eyes on this battle at the lead. At the moment, it's separated just a little bit. You know, as long as Birdo can keep his nose clean, he'll be just maintaining that gap of about 3 seconds and nothing will be happening. But that could change at the drop of a hat, can't it, Stance?
It can, but he needs a bigger gap than that because he will need to take a longer pit stop than Xeris does. When Xeris comes in for his pit stop, we saw it with Goofball Antics, you're basically in, splash and dash, off you go. If you're one of those Porsches, you've been drinking a lot of fuel and it'll take much longer to replenish that tank.
So I think what Birdo has effectively done here is he's effectively handed the race lead to Xeris once they come in for their stops.
Yeah, effective race leader after they finish their stops. I fully expect that to be Xeris.
Yeah, and Brenton Foley, we can't discredit him either. Qualified in 5th position, currently running 3rd, on track for his first podium so far this season. He's got a couple of 5th place finishes so far, as I said earlier, which are his best results so far. Didn't really show his true pace. I'd say he's finally got the hang of this Ford Capri, and he really likes this Montreal circuit. He's able to really stretch his legs around here and pull up a great gap on resist behind him now, as we see Madbird, as a result of that pit stop, now in 7th position. So not too far behind. He's lost about 25 seconds on resist as we speak now on lap 18. So it's a couple of laps after he made that stop. I got the word out eventually. So keep in mind the delta time for this track is going to be anywhere between 23 to 25 seconds.
We've added Greg Turrer to the list of retirements in the last lap. He retired from the race and joins Bang and Desamage out of this race.
It's a shame to see. He was not doing too badly there, keeping his nose out of trouble. I'm just trying to wind back through the reels to see what's happened to him, but it's a long way away.
Pits.
I will pay attention to Foley now as we have a look at the current race as it is, and Foley is in the pit lane. So he's taking his stop now, as is Resist and Tyrrell.
The Resist, that'll be interesting to see where Resist comes out relative to Madbird, who's already made his pit stop.
Speaking of people who've already made their pit stops, Goofball Antics is now in a podium position.
He is too, and that's legitimate. So he has jumped Madbird. Madbird is... Where is Madbird? He's gone through into 4th place ahead of Brenton Foley. That's very interesting. So Foley has lost a huge amount of time in the pit stop phase.
Big shake up there. I wonder if Brenton Foley had any damage or anything, or if he just miscalculated the fuel that was going into that car. Sam Smith is in 7th position as a result, and he's posted the fastest lap, which is a 1 minute 30.575. But he is not pitted yet as he gets a big 2-wheel action through turn 3. Much the same as what Birdo did. Didn't get the car on his roof this time, but he'll want to be very careful.
Yeah, just catching a replay of that moment for Sam Smith. Almost identical, but was able to save it and obviously drove off with a minimal loss of time as a result of that. He won't be setting the fastest lap on this occasion as he goes around the chicanes there at turns 7 and 8. So Resist in 6th place. Brenton Foley is in 5th. Goofball Antics ahead of him in 4th place. Madbird, the winner in this pit stop phase, he's ahead of all of them. It makes me wonder whether he's put enough fuel in, because we're used to those 320s putting in just a splash and getting to the end of the race. So maybe Goof has overfueled or Madbird is underfueled. Either way, he occupies that final spot on the podium, and he can thank his strategist for that.
Yeah,
probably him.
Yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that one, because that could be very interesting in the closing stages of this race if one of them starts coughing and needs to fuel save around the final kilometres of this race. So we don't know what's going to happen there just yet. That'll play out as the race progresses. I'd say the closest battle we have on track at the moment is Resist, with Sam Smith all over the back of him as they go through the final chicane to start their 20th laps respectively. Sam Smith has a lot of wheels in the dirt there. He's going to try and have a run through turn 1. No, he's not going to do it. He had a look, but thought better of it.
Resist could have told him that doesn't work, and because he's also tried it with a lot of his wheels, 50% of them in fact, in the grass on the way down to turn 1. Stopping ability is much, much reduced. Now this of course is not a battle for, well, it is a battle for position, but Sam Smith hasn't pitted yet, so Resist may well, if he finds that he's losing time to Sam in this battle, just elect to let Sam go through. But I don't know if he's got give up written in his DNA. Certainly doesn't belong to his teammate Xeris, who's now 2.7 seconds behind Berto, and just eking away tenths of a second over that gap. Now Sam tries to go around the outside as they go down to turn 9, and Resist doesn't make that too hard for him. Sam up into 6th place.
Well, it still could have proven to be a legitimate battle because it may have been in Resist's favour to just stay in front of Sam Smith as long as he could and slowed him down, because if Sam Smith was able to make the charge in the final 23 minutes of this race and get back up to the front few positions of this race, that period of time where he was stuck behind Resist trying to get through could have made all the difference and could have helped Resist's championship standing a little bit more. He is currently down in 7th in the title race, but maybe he would have had one more position up his sleeve, have Sam Smith stayed behind him just that little bit longer.
Potentially so. The other thing that is good news from Sam's point of view is that now that Berto's had all these issues, Sam Smith has got his lap back, and if there is another safety car before the end of this race, everything will close back up and he will be right back in the fight again.
That's exactly right. And now we're starting to see some very big margins as a result of these pit stops between 2nd and 3rd. We're just seeing someone stuck into the pits now. I think it is one of the Pink Pig Porsches, and it is Berto who is now pitted.
Berto pits, lap 21. You say big margins between a lot of the runners, but the smallest margin on track right now is between Madbird and Goofball Antics over 3rd place, which will become 2nd potentially. Actually, no, it won't, because they won't get ahead of Berto. Discredit what I just said, as you no doubt have already. Foley is also buying into this battle behind Madbird and Goofball Antics, and this could get very tasty.
It very well could get tasty indeed. Berto was a very short stop from him, so I'm wondering if he's calculated the right amount of fuel for the end of this race.
Well, he has had a couple of... Here we go. Again, round the outside. Goofball Antics up into 3rd place. Fantastic move.
He had so much drive out of that hairpin. That was unbelievable. It was like he was driving a whole different car out of that corner. I don't know how he's done it, but he's done it. And now he's through into 3rd position. So Goofball Antics has that podium locked down. Madbird's going to have a look in the final chicane. Nothing much he can do there, but it's not his only chance yet. On the run into turn 2, he might have a look and try and get him around the outside of 1. He's going to have a peek. Not much he can do, though. Goofball Antics stays where he is.
He's almost being defensive for that position on with Bretton Foley now, as Sam Smith once again sets the fastest lap of the race. I think now Goofball Antics must be clear, because they're into that part of the circuit where the BMW 320 just excels and excels. Now, Bretton Foley is all over the back of Bretton Foley like a rash on your ass, and he doesn't have any anisole.
That sentence just compounded by the fact you said Brenton Foley was all over the back of Brenton Foley. It is indeed Madbird. It is indeed Madbird in 4th position.
You pointed that out.
That's one for the highlight reel for sure. So Madbird is in 4th position, desperately trying to hold off Brenton Foley, anisole or not. So it's going to be a very hairy battle between these two. And these two are very evenly matched throughout the season so far. Madbird is ahead in the championship a couple of spots, due in part to his podium that he got early in the season in Belle Isle. So it is shaping up on paper at the least to be Madbird's fight to win. But anything can happen. I sound like a broken record when I say it, but it bears repeating.
It does. It does bear repeating. We're waiting anxiously now for Xeris to make his pit stop, of course. But this is the closest battle on the racetrack. The closest battle in terms of strategy is between Xeris and Berto, with Berto having been the first of the first 2 drivers to pull the trigger. And Xeris now, we're like an expectant father. We're trotting around the pit lane waiting for him to come in to make that pit stop.
Well, as it stands, he's currently 38 seconds ahead of Berto. So if he makes his stop and takes enough fuel, he'll still be ahead by a fair whack once he exits the lane. Oh, that's a big track cut as he goes through the chicane, though. Very bouncy on the surface of the racing track as he goes through there. He stays out this lap, but oh, that could have been a whole different story on the exit of that chicane.
Yeah, well, we've talked up a lot of drivers who have subsequently put their race at an end, and Berto's off at the hairpin. Oh, he's stationary. Where is he? He's stuck in the gravel. He's going to lose position potentially to Goofball Antics if he can't get it out in the next 20 seconds. He got 2 wheels on the inside grass on the entry to the hairpin, trying to overtake one of the Capris, which I believe was driven by Tyrrell. He's lost a huge amount of time with that moment. We cut to him just as it happened.
That's massive from Birdo, and these gravel pits around this track are very, very deep, so if you get buried in them and stop your car, it takes a long time to get back out, and lap traffic around this part of around this circuit is a little bit difficult, and I'm not sure that Birdo is going to be very happy that Tyrrell was on the outside of that corner.
Well, it depends. We didn't see what preceded that, but of course that is going to make all this pit talk completely inconsequential. I would have thought Xerus should come out with quite a comfortable buffer if he has a normal pit stop. And he's coming around the hairpin now. He has a 46-second advantage over Berto. Berto's still quite comfortable in second place. 15 seconds is the margin to Goofball Antics, who's shot clear of Madbird by about 5 seconds. How is Sam Smith has put himself in between Bretton Foley and Madbird. That's how
He's just about to go up in front of Madbird as well, so that car is rapid. These fastest laps have been paying off, and Sam Smith is now provisionally sitting in 4th position. Of course, I don't think he's pitted yet. He's up 8 spots from where he started, and having dropped back 2 times, it just shows you how quick that car is around this track.
Remember, he still has to make a pit stop. Well, actually, I say that. He has pitted for damage, but I fear that was way too early for him to make it to the end of the race. Watch this space. Maybe it'll be a very short pit stop in the last 5 or 10 minutes of this race, but he may well be able to get to 4th and 5th place, or for where he is now in 4th. He might be able to get back there on pace, even with a splash and dash.
Yeah, he may be able to manage his tyres all the way to the end of this race, but petrol I'm not too sure about. He just had a big lock-up on the run into the hairpin, unfortunately.
Goof has had an off. That's why Goofball is only 2 seconds ahead. He was about 5 seconds ahead before. He's gone off somewhere in the middle sector. We saw just a replay of him travelling through the grass, and what a remarkable race there as Sam Smith bounces off the curbs.
The 2 Capris were side by side through that chicane. Madbird just coming out ahead of Brenton Foley there. So that's really becoming a hotspot for battles when it really shouldn't be.
Now Xerus has made his pit stop. The gap is down to 23 seconds and stable, and Foley is moving to the inside to take over 4th place from Madbird. He backs out of it, and now he tries to slice up the inside at turn 2. There wasn't a gap open there, so all it amounts to is a little bit of Morse code, to which Madbird promptly didn't reply, and the battle for 5th place is continuing to rage on. Meanwhile, Sam Smith has been dropped by Goofball Antics a little bit, and the Capri battle rages on. So Xerus is now in the lead legitimately by 22 seconds over Berto, who's got over 20 seconds to Goofball Antics in 3rd place, but it's certainly not decided from that point of view. We don't know what Sam Smith is on in terms of his strategy, and Sam Smith
I'll tell you what he's not on the track. He's gone off of the bridge chicane, lost a huge chunk of time, and those Capris are going to be all over him like a cheap suit in just a second.
It's like there's some metaphorical oil down. That's where Goof went off a lap ago. So that's a bit strange. Tyres getting old for the Porsche 935 turbos. I reckon Sam must be in the pitch soon, surely.
Yeah, these cars don't behave very well around this track. Berto's been very nervous throughout this whole race, as we've seen. With the amount of errors he's been making, he's up on 2 wheels through turn 2 there. So he needs to be very careful on these curbs, as does Sam Smith as well. So, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen yet at this stage.
He's in. Sam's in.
Sam Smith has pitted. So, that means that the 2 Ford Capris of Madbird and Brenton Foley are going to be getting past him now. So, Madbird is up in the 4th position once again. Brenton Foley is just behind him in 5th, and that battle stays where it is. A lot of bumper music happening between those 2. Brenton Foley is being very careful not to spin this car around, as we see Rhodey get a second drive-through penalty for what I presume is getting out of the way of lap traffic throughout this race. He is 3 laps down on the lead lap at the moment. But back onto the lead lap. It is Madbird who leads by a margin of, well, it's an inconsequential margin at this point, over Brenton Foley, and that is not done yet.
It's a long stop for Sam Smith. He's coming out now. Currently in 7th place. Roadhog is a lap down, so he shouldn't lose that position. And the gap to the car ahead is 23 seconds. So he's got a lot of work to do as Ben Rhodes loses control of his Ford Capri in front. But he's a lap down, so he's not any concern of Sam's right now. Sam has stayed on the lead lap. That is another crucial factor.
Very important for Sam Smith. And now It's just down to him to keep putting in those fast laps and keep charging his way up through the field to see what he can do in 13, 14 minutes towards the end of this race.
Wow. Usually at this point of the race, everything's settling down. We're waxing lyrical about whoever's winning the race at that time. And we're starting to calculate championship points, but we haven't had an opportunity because this is still kicking off. And Brenton Foley is all over the back of Madbird. He's all over the curbs as well. He's going to put it in the wall or he's going to get that position.
He's slapped the wall on the exit of the final chicane, so he is certainly going to do one of those things you've just suggested to him. And it's not going to give him too much time. Big lunge into turn 2. Keeps it on the track. Has another one. He's rotated
no.
Madbird.
Well, he's surely just going to let Madbird go ahead here because they have a gap. We'll see the replay while they're sorting that one out. So that was a long way to come back from. And we saw that brewing for a few laps, actually. Every time they came through that corner, they were doing the Ford Capri the Ford Capri breeding program, but this time it all ended in tears for both of them. Foley's remained ahead, so I get the feeling this is going to get looked at post-race if he doesn't allow Madbird to get through.
Up now on the run into
the problem is Resist is right behind them. That's the problem.
Yeah, so he's going to have to be wary not to lose that second place to Resist as well. He just jumped back on the accelerator and stuck in behind Madbird. So it is as it was. Madbird 4th, Brenton Foley 5th. And there's not a huge amount of damage on either of those cars, but Resist is now 7/10 of a second behind, and he's well and truly in this battle.
All right, so now he's redressed the position. We're all rosy, I think, from Foley's point of view. But what they have done is eroded a lot of time. Now, as you say, Resist is behind. Sam Smith is not out of the question that he gets ahead of all three of these guys. At the pace he was running, he's only 20 seconds behind them. Yes, there's only 10 minutes left in the race, but there is potentially enough time, especially if Foley does things like that, nearly puts it in the wall and loses position to Resist. There is time for Sam to catch these three.
Brenton Foley's lost another spot to Resist there through the back straight. He got a lot of airtime off that curb, but he's just gained it back on the main straight, passed around the outside into turn 1. Great move from Brenton Foley to make that spot back up, but it looks like Brenton Foley's flawless race from before is starting to fall apart just a little bit.
Yeah, I still think we can heap praise on him for his first stint. It's just, maybe it's when he's in traffic, he's just struggling in these cars. The wheel-to-wheel combat is very, very difficult in these cars. And on your own, you can get yourself into a bit of a rhythm, which just isn't possible when you're in these sorts of tense arm wrestles that go on lap after lap. Oh, and Resist has gone wide. That's like Vettel in 2011 against Jenson Button. Just went deep and has lost a huge amount of ground as a result.
So that battle from Madbird all the way down to Resist has now gone back to exactly the way it was.
Nothing has happened. Drive-through penalty for Tyrrell, and we would expect that's probably for the track cut violations that we were talking about earlier in the race. Sam Smith has gone a lap down, so unfortunately we can't see the gap on the left-hand side of the screen, but we do see it down the bottom there. 25 seconds to Resist. So he's lost the lap to Xeris, which is not something we were expecting to be saying. Sam was running the fastest laps of the race, so it's surprising that he let Xeris catch and pass him.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I'd almost want to suggest that Sam Smith has just had enough of those errors that he was making around this track and decided he's going to keep it relatively easy throughout the rest of this race. Just take home whatever points he can, because one more of those off-track excursions could lose him all points entirely.
Well, it's going to be very costly in his battle against Goofball Antics. Goofball Antics, who has had a major crash in this race and a bad start. Fought his way back up into third place and is quite comfortable at the moment with a 20-second advantage over Madbird. He's not going to trouble Berto for second place, but third place will continue his extraordinary run of podiums, which goes third, first, second, third, second, third. So far, it'll be his third place finish. He's got 2 second place finishes and 1 first place finish, which gives me a weird amount of satisfaction that the number of firsts is 1 and the number of thirds is 3. Of course, he still has to finish that way. What will probably give him Goofball Antics more satisfaction is that he will have an 18-point advantage over Sam Smith if it finishes like it is right now.
Now he just has to finish 5th in this race, and for the rest of the season, everything will be in perfect order.
Exactly right. Or he could finish 4th 4 times. Good Belantics, that is. But that's not particular. That's by the by, because now Madbird is getting passed around the outside by Brenton Foley. So Brenton Foley, who was coming under pressure from Resist not too long ago, has clambered back onto the rear of Madbird, who was clear. It makes me wonder if Madbird's made a mistake in the last lap or so, and that battle's back on.
Not exactly sure what's happened there. I was watching him in the early part of the lap, and Brenton Foley was all over the back of him, flashing the headlights, trying to get through. So I'm not sure if Madbird's just a little bit slow at the moment as a result of an issue that he's got, if he has made contact with the wall and damaged himself. But he doesn't seem to be too knocked around, not too many dents in that car. May have just made a mistake somewhere.
Quite possibly. This is the closest battle on the racetrack. Now Sam Smith is a long way behind. Brenton Foley goes deep at the Vettel corner, and now that puts Resist back on his tail. But Resist just can't find a way through. That big, heavy M1 is just not nimble enough through this section of the racetrack to make a move on that light Ford Capri.
He's trying his best around these left-right bends, but there's just nothing he can do in that BMW M1. This might be one of his best chances, though, on the run down to the bridge chicane. If he can get up behind him and jump on the brakes at just the right time. He's having a look, but he's not going to do anything here.
So this is probably the earliest time, or the earliest time of this race that we've actually had a breath. Even though we've still got a 3-car battle going on, but pretty much everywhere else the gaps are set. They're more or less decided. We don't want to speak too early, of course. There's still 7 minutes remaining in which anything can happen. But now we've got Brenton Foley trying to drive around the outside. No way through there. We know that's more or less suicide. Oh, what? There's part of Roadhog's car. Part of Roadhog's car is on the back straight. So Roadhog's had an incident somewhere. He's without the front of his car. Sam's
big moment on the main straight. Madbird's had a moment too. He got way too wobbly out of the exit of the final corner, and he slapped the wall, lost his front right quarter panel. I was watching Roadhog last lap, and he just, lost it through that back chicane and hit the fence head on. He's still out there running on the track, but that's the reason why his bonnet is sitting on the side of the pavement there. That's not going to be too much of a hindrance. What is going to be a hindrance for Madbird is if he keeps doing that to himself. He's down in 6th position now behind Resist and Brenton Foley. So that answers the question of how Resist is going to get past Madbird. The answer is Madbird is going to lose control out of the final corner and slap the wall.
We're going to have to watch his sector times because his advantage over Sam Smith is only 15 seconds. One would think that he should be able to hold that if his car is still drivable at around 95% of what it's capable of. But if he's badly damaged, that gap could ebb away very, very quickly indeed. But he's lost those 2 positions, as you say. Resist now in 5th place and Brenton Foley in 4th place, which would be Brenton Foley's best result of the championship so far, with his best before that, a 5th place coming in Sebring.
There's not much of a battle now for Brenton Foley to face unless Resist can catch onto the back of him, but it has been pretty consistent in terms of times between Resist and those 2 Ford Capris that he's been dueling with for the vast majority of this race. As Brenton Foley has a huge moment through that chicane. He keeps it together, as does Brenton Foley. Whenever he does something like that, I don't know how he keeps doing that.
I just imagine Brenton Foley when he was a young lad, and his grandmother showing him a priceless vase made out of 100-year-old china, and he's just always on the verge of dropping it, but then usually didn't.
I like to believe he learned how to drive with one of his parents sitting in the passenger seat, just randomly yanking at the wheel every now and then.
And, well, I mean, he certainly learned how to react to that. But Resist will be hoping that he puts it off the track, and that'll give Resist a 4th place finish for a handy haul of points. I think he'd be pretty happy with 5th place, though, given where he qualified. Didn't set a lap in qualifying. This is the battle of 2 guys who, if I'm not wrong, didn't set laps times in qualifying. I'm trying to remember what Foley did. It was towards the back end of the lap, if I'm remembering correctly, that Foley put it off the track, and he's put it off the track once more, and that's going to put him under pressure around the outside. Resist is going to have the inside into the hairpin, and Foley loses the position.
There it is. So his Resist is now up into 4th position, just as a result of keeping his car on the track and keeping his nose out of trouble. and he's going to be stretching the legs of that BMW M1, trying to use as much of that power as he can to eke out a gap on these two, but he's not going to be fast through this chicane here. So Brenton Foley will still be all over the back of that car and trying to get back up into that 4th position as Resist gets very wobbly and Brenton Foley's already done it.
Wow. So that didn't take long for the reply from Brenton Foley. Has a huge moment out of the Wall of Champions and somehow manages to save it and keep the advantage that he had going into the corner. Probably Resist backed off thinking, whoa, Nelly. And somehow Brenton Foley remains in 4th place after a lap and a half, or half a lap even, that was conducive to losing it all. But he's managed to save his position as Resist goes straight into the wall, front first. Big damage to the BMW M1. That's going to put him under pressure from Madbird.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge shame. So Madbird's going to go up the inside into this corner now. Just touches the side of him. So Resist is through. They've just slammed into each other. That's not what you want to be doing at this point of the race. And just everything's falling apart now. Brenton Foley's back up into 4th, really making the most of that Stairs Noise sponsorship as he charges away. And he's like the Mark Marquez of saving in this DRM series.
Well, he's clear. And basically, now what this battle amounts to is 2 wounded horses just sort of towing at each other feebly as they bash each other out of the way. One of them will say, hey, you did this, and the other will say, you did this, as Madbird dives up the inside at the hairpin. I wonder if they've had words in Discord and Resist has decided upon reflection to relinquish that position to Madbird because, well, frankly, both passes were rude. They really can't afford this, though, because looming in the background is the pink pig of Sam Smith. Sam Smith, who's lapping, well, early on in the race was a record pace, 5 seconds faster than Resist on the previous lap, and he's on the back of him already. Goes through like Resist isn't even moving.
It looks like Resist has decided that battle's not for him, and Xeris is going to lap him as well, so I think Xeris has quite a bit of damage from that. He just can't corner now.
And
Sam's
got his lap back from Xeris as well.
He has. He got that back a few laps ago. They were roughly even on pace, and now Sam Smith decided to put the foot down. He's got the confidence back in that Porsche 935, and he's really making the most of it. 6th position now from Sam Smith. Not a huge amount he can do, but there's a couple of spots in front of him that are within arm's reach towards the end of this race, at least. There's only 1 minute 23 to go. We've just lost track of time now, so there's only about 2 or 3 laps to go. I wonder if he'll get past Madbird and perhaps even Brenton Foley, who's currently sitting in 4th position. If Foley makes another error, that could be Sam Smith on track for 4th. And
that would be incredibly valuable in his bid for the championship. The points are so valuable, and this was a bit of a freebie. This little incident, I think Sam Smith actually has had a bit of contact somewhere after his pit stop because the car looks like it's a little bit damaged, but nonetheless he's still lapping much faster than those around him. He's going to be right on the back of Madbird. I don't think Madbird will be able to offer much of a resistance, so that could be 5th place for Sam Smith. And as you say, if Foley puts it in the fence, that's another position potentially.
Madbird's already...
Yeah, he's just
Sam
pulled
Smith's
over.
already passed him now. Yeah, Madbird made a bit of an error on the hairpin there, pulled it up onto the grass on the inside of that corner. So Sam Smith was able to breeze past him with ease. There's 27 seconds left in this race now. Let's see where Xeris is. Can Xeris cross the line one more time before this counter expires? I'd say he can. So this is going to be a 37-lap race. 37 laps it will be as Xeris comes across the line to begin the penultimate lap of this race. He holds a 14-second advantage over Berto, and that has been gradually coming down, but I think Xeris has got it covered. And Goofball Antics is 40 seconds behind Berto, so certainly no pressure for Berto from behind. He can afford to cruise at home. Brenton Foley, after that immense battle with so many others, is going to come out in 4th place if he keeps it on the road. But Sam Smith is about 6 seconds behind him. I don't think he's going to have time to run down Brenton Foley. Foley will have to put it in the fence. But, I mean, lesser or more unlikely things have happened in this race. And Sam Smith, from last at one stage, is going to come home in 5th place. And provisionally 97 points to 113 for Goofball Antics. So although Goofball Antics grows his championship advantage, it wasn't as much as it could possibly have been earlier in the race when Sam was last. There's 2 things I want you to keep in mind in the dying moments of this race. One of those is track cut violations. Yes, we haven't seen any penalties from anyone besides lap traffic because everyone's been keeping it relatively on track. But you've got 4 track cuts up your sleeve before you start getting a penalty. And if you get a penalty at this stage in the race, it gets added onto your time, I believe. So that could change the landscape of how this race is dramatically. Also, you have to keep in mind, Nigel Mansell threw away a race here in Formula One in real life back in 1987, I believe it was, or in the early 1990s it may have been. I think it was 1991. Sorry, I got my years all mixed up there. He celebrated a lap too early, let his revs drop a bit too hard, and he stalled it. Now, that's not likely in this sim racing nature here, but it just goes to show that you cannot count out anyone until this last lap is completed. Xeris, I believe, is going to be able to bring it home and finish this race with flying colours. But yeah, anything can happen.
And Xeris is now on the final lap of this race, and you wouldn't have believed it if you'd watched our Caterham series where he was dominant, won all but one race in that championship and had it wrapped up fairly close, or fairly early on in the season. We've got to round 6 before he takes his first victory, but tonight he is going to be victorious. He's just got half a lap between himself and his first win of the season, and that would make him the only man in Apex Rear Wing to win a race in every single season that we've held. And he, of course, would add to his remarkable tally, 69. He's been stuck on that number for quite a long time. This would be his 70th victory of a remarkable number of starts. That's a fantastic percentage. With 114 races under his belt, he's won 70 of them. If he just negotiates these last few corners and comes across the line.
Was that 140 races or 114?
14.
114. So that's better than a 50% percentage as Xeris crosses the line now. He wins in Montreal for ARW Season 8. His first win this season. A fantastic race from Xeris in the BMW 320. Followed by Berto in the Pink Pig Porsche number 13. He crosses the line in second position to take yet another podium and bolster his championship run. Goofball Antics won't extend his lead, but he's going to be very far up there. He's got a little bit of a time to go now. He's still 52 seconds behind. So Goofball Antics still has half a lap to go before he finishes this race, but he is in the box seat to take home yet another podium finish and keep that run going.
Brendan Foley's got about a 1.5 second advantage over Sam Smith, so one would think he's got that in hand, but there is still the best part of a lap to go for those two, as we're currently on board or looking at Goofball Antics negotiate the final sector to continue his remarkable run of podium finishes and extending his championship lead, as we mentioned earlier, to a remarkable advantage of 16 points. Tyrrell gets another drive-through penalty. Well done for Goofball Antics, a fantastic recovery. Here's Brenton Foley with Sam Smith not too far behind him, much closer than he would have expected earlier in the race. Up on two wheels, it's going to come down to the final corner between these two. Is it going to be fourth place for Brenton Foley or for Sam Smith? It's a run to the line. I don't think there's enough power in that Porsche 935 Turbo. It's Brenton Foley's best result of the championship. Fourth place for him. And Sam Smith, with a remarkable recovery, picks up valuable points for fifth.
So that's all the runners having crossed the line now with only 5 cars on the lead lap. What a race in those final stages. So your podium sitters are Xeris, 13 spots up from where he qualified, or rather failed to qualify as a result of that track cut violation. He wins this race. He wins the 6th race of the series, and he's got his first W chalked up. Berto is in second position in the Black Schuppen Rennen Pink Pig Porsche, and Goofball makes it 1 first, 2 seconds, and 3/3 this season.
And breathe. That was a remarkable race, Matty. Let's have a bit of a chat to our podium sitters. They've been gracious enough to join us post-race after, no doubt, a breathless race for themselves as well. Let's turn to Xeris. Run me through your thoughts after the first corner of that race. Did you think victory was on the cards then?
I absolutely did not think I was going to be anywhere close to the podium that race.
No, well, it didn't take you that long, having said that, to fight your way back into contention. In a race that didn't have a safety car when many thought it would, you clawed your way back into the front without the aid of the safety car. And well, just tell us how you did it.
So obviously I had an atrocious start, and what did I do from there? I was very angry for the first few laps, and then I sort of put my head down, noticed my pace was extremely quick compared to the others because they were battling each other and stuff like that. And then over the race, I sort of pulled through each pass as it came, and then a lot of very hairy moments. And then I believe Berto made a couple of really big mistakes, so that allowed me to get up into the winning spot.
And knowing, of course, that the BMW is a bit more economical on fuel, did you ever entertain the thought of no stopping, or was it always going to be a one stop and that short stop put you in a position to win?
No, I would have needed to save, I think, like 0.6 of a litre over a lap, which is basically impossible without dropping off like 4 or 5 seconds a lap. So it wasn't really worth doing that.
Fair enough. So congratulations on, unbelievably, your first victory of this championship and potentially the floodgates opening for you.
Oh, good Lord, I hope so. That was really, really something.
Certainly was. Let's turn our attention to Berto, and after it looked like Sam had the pace over you in qualifying, you pulled out the pole position when he threw it in the wall, and it looked like you had it covered, but a few big mistakes from your point of view.
Yeah, first up, massive thanks to Heath and Madbird with practice during the week. That was fantastic fun. But yeah, a couple of mistakes, like just little ones, little slow errors for the most part. So yeah, a little bit frustrating, but congratulations to Xeris because it was a great drive.
We saw yourself and your teammate Sam Smith end up on your roofs at various points throughout the race. Is that just a side effect of the way these Porsche 935s handle around this track? You weren't the only two to struggle with them because D Samaj also DNF'd. How does the car go around Montreal?
Yeah, they're super sensitive to the curbs. So anything, it doesn't take much to put them on two wheels or flip them. And yeah, I think at least with myself, you saw that it turned, geez, what was it, 3?
Yes.
Yeah, just really slow, took a little bit too much curb and over she went.
Yeah, so it was really made commentary a nightmare for us, just trying to figure out what gaps everyone had, especially around the pit stop windows. But you were able to hold on and maintain that second position. So congratulations to you, Berto. Great race for you. You're still in the championship hunt. Now let's turn our attention to Goofball Antics, who still leads this championship battle with 113 points to Sam Smith's 97. You've got a lot to answer for, Goofball Antics. You finished your qualifying lap sideways, having presumably thrown it away before posting provisional pole. Then into the race, you had a massive move around the outside of somebody through that chicane on the back straight before immediately ducking into the pits. What was going through your mind?
Well, that was probably the worst race I've had this season. Felt awful, yeah. But qualifying, I just cracked the poopies at the end of that lap because I knew that was a lot slower than what I should have been doing. So I thought, bugger it, I'll just slide over that line. The thing before going into the pits, that was I just got a good drive on Madbird, and I thought he was letting me through. So I thought, oh, all right, I'll keep my foot in it. And so we discussed it at the time, and there was a bit of confusion there because I was always going to pit anyway. But yeah, that was just confusing. But yeah, just a real crappy race. Oh, I mean, I shouldn't complain too much. I'm in third. I'm on the podium. But as far as driving it, that was pretty awful.
Well,
considering the times I knew I could have been doing.
If third place is what happens when you have a bad race, then that's a very worrying sign for everyone else. Tell us what happened when there was a lot of action at the start and we saw a lot of people getting caught up. What happened to you at the start? Was it just a case of bogging it off the line, or were you caught up in a bit of the incidents that happened there?
Oh, I bogged it off the line, and then there were cars everywhere. I had a big freeze for a few seconds that lost me about 3 positions. I just coming out of the second or third chicane, whichever one it is, the game froze. I thought it was going to disconnect entirely, and I came back to sort of 2 or 3 positions behind where I was. So thank God I didn't, suddenly appear in front of somebody. So I lost a bunch of time there, and was just a bit frazzled. I ended up getting 2 track cuts, I think, in 1 lap or 2 laps. So yeah, I just sort of had to try and drive carefully from then on. And yeah, there it is. Just not a great sort of feeling overall for 55 minutes there.
There you go. Well, a remarkable recovery considering where you were after the first
Thank
lap.
you.
So congratulations on that, and of course,
Thank you.
congratulations to our other podium sitters. But
Well, yeah, congrats to Xeris. And again, yeah, Birdo and Madbird, thanks for practice during the week. It's just been amazing.
absolutely fantastic entertainment all round. Maddie, what were your thoughts?
Well, it was really an unpredictable race, and I knew that from the onset, given the nature of the circuit, just how easy it is to go off your line and smack a wall at various parts of the track there. So it was a great job by a lot of these guys to keep themselves on track and keep going around. We only had 3 DNFs, I think it was, in the end. So not too much of a race of attrition as we thought it was going to be. So it just shows that everyone's really getting some great handles on these cars, really knowing how to get the best out of them. And just watching Brenton Foley just almost crash at least once every lap was just a phenomenal thing to watch. But next time out, we're going to Hollowham Raceway, which is a custom-built track by our very own Roadhog. That's going to be a brand new experience for every single driver in this field, bar Roadhog himself. So if any race this season is going to be unpredictable, it's going to be that one, Stairs.
Yeah, he's produced some pretty good racetracks for us already with Halls Gap in the Porsche Boxer Cup Series and last series in the Caterhams where we went to Place City Circuit. So Hollowham, the latest in a long line of installments from Roadhog, and we very much look forward to seeing what that presents for us. As you said, a completely unknown quantity for pretty much everyone apart from Roadhog, and that includes ourselves. We really, really don't know what to expect. We can't wait. We'll catch you at the same time next week for that, round 7, and also keep an eye out for a new Dirt Rally live stage set to drop in the near future as well. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.